Thank you, Annelies, for this introduction. Good afternoon to all our participants. Good afternoon to our distinguished speakers. And thank you all for joining us today for this lab debate on strengthening global partnership to combat wildlife crime. As Annelies said, my name is Michel Masozera. I'm the Director of Policy and Institutional Partnerships for Africa at the Wildlife Conservation Society. And I'll be moderating this lab debate today. The session will be divided into two sections. First, a panel presentation with two speakers and a short video, and then we'll leave some time for questions and answers at the end. We had originally planned for 3 speakers, but one of the speakers has some technical issues. So today we listen to two speakers. I'd like to remind all participants that you may send questions to our panelists through Slido, and that they will be answered through Q&A at the end. As mentioned during the high-level panel, wildlife trafficking is devastating population of many species across the globe. A large number of species are now threatened, primarily by poaching, due to international demand for their specimens, parts, and products. Being currently based in Africa, I can already say that this situation is exacerbated by corruption, lack of good governance, and nowhere is corruption more pervasive, transcontinental, systematic, and relentless than in natural resource sector in Africa, including wildlife, forests, and fisheries. In return, this also leads to loss of direct income to country economies, loss of jobs, peace and security. Also, this affects livelihoods of local communities living around these protected areas. It takes a network to defeat a network. Combating wildlife crime requires unprecedented coordination and cooperation between civil society actors, law enforcement agencies, and the private sector. In this session, speakers from WCS, Sun Yat-sen University, and the Center for Media and Development Initiatives, and TikTok, which is known as Douyin in China, will explore the challenges of those partnerships, highlight case studies where this has worked and this has failed, identify conditions and change we need to make for future successful partnerships that will have impact on deterring wildlife criminals. In this session, special attention will be given to counter wildlife trafficking network in the Amazon region, behavior studies in China, the critical role of journalists in Vietnam, and the role of social media and online platforms. So I'm now told that the third speaker is online, so we'll hear 3 presentations. So now, without any further ado, I would like to give the floor to our first speaker, Mrs. Giovanna Murillo, who is the WCS Program Manager for Counter Wildlife Trafficking in the Andes, Amazon, and Orinoco region. Giovanna is a veterinarian with specialization in wildlife management and conservation. She has more than 8 years of experience in combating wildlife trafficking in Peru. In 2019, since 2019, she coordinates the Counter Wildlife Trafficking Program in the Andes Amazon region for WCS. Giovanna is also a member of the Global Initiative Network Experts Organization and the Latin American section of the Wildlife Disease Association. Giovanna will now present the Alliance for Wildlife and Forest, a regional action implemented by WCS and WWF and funded by the European Union, which seeks to tackle wildlife and timber trafficking through the engagement of civil society and cooperation with and between authorities in Bolivia, Colombia, Ecuador, Peru, and border areas with Brazil. Giovanna, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Michelle. Yes, thanks, Michelle. Well, today I'm going to present a brief description of progress and achievement reached in the framework of Alliance for Wildlife and Forests. That is a regional action implemented under EU support. I have also a PPT to present about the initiative. Okay, thank you. Well, Latin America is one of the most biodiverse regions in the world. Only in South America is more than 40% of Earth biodiversity. However, this biodiversity faces significant threats, include the illegal and unsustainable extraction of wildlife and timber. Next, please. The Alliance for Wildlife and Forests is a 4-year regional action started in 2019, implemented by WCS and WWF in Bolivia, Colombia, Ecuador, Peru, and border areas with Brazil. This action seeks to tackle wildlife and timber trafficking through the engagement of civil society, such as local communities, indigenous people, and urban population, and cooperation with and between authorities in charge of law enforcement, such as environmental authorities, police, customs, prosecutors, among others. Next, please. To attain the problem, the action set 3 specific objectives relate on improve a common understanding about the problem at local, regional, and international level. Also develop the collaboration mechanisms to enhance law enforcement between and with authorities. Inform and engage civil society to promote cooperation with authorities. Next, please. In the first 2 years implementing the action, we have obtained different important results. For example, the development of national border areas diagnostic reports on legal and illegal wildlife trade and timber trade to improve the understanding of wildlife and timber trafficking dynamics in the region. Also, different collaboration mechanisms between civil society and government agencies as different binational strategies between neighbor countries, for example, Peru and Colombia, also Ecuador and Colombia. Another example is the implementation of a national alliance for jaguar conservation and protection in Bolivia. And the last one was the Lima Declaration as a regional commitment, where the action have a technical support, gave a technical support. In addition, the action obtains different significant results on empowering indigenous organizations and rural communities, where 2 self-declarations against the illegal wildlife trade from indigenous organizations in Bolivia have developed under action support. Next, please. Well, despite the progress, there are still many challenges to face. Most of them are linked to insufficient political attention of wildlife trafficking as transnational crime. Another challenge is related to data management and exchanging information between the government, the multi-agencies and their authorities at domestic, international level. Also, it's important, for example, to have this type of quality, good quality information to conduct intelligence investigation and prosecute the illegal wildlife trade. In addition, another priority that we identified is the essential to promote demand reduction actions. as the adoption of behavior change science to civil society improvement of awareness, and actions regarding to this problem, encouraging response and possible solution from the civil society. Well, we are making different progress in our region, but still have a long way to go. But we are working to different actions to combat wildlife trafficking, and one of them is this under the EU support. Thank you.
Thank you, Giovanna, for this insightful presentation, highlighting the challenges we face in the region and the innovative approach WCSC is developing to face them. I would like now to welcome our second panelist, Professor Tien-Ming Lee. Professor Lee teaches at the School of Life Sciences and School of Ecology at the Sun Yat-sen University in China. He's also an Oxford Martin Visiting Fellow on the illegal wildlife trade at the University of Oxford. He defended his PhD thesis at the University of California, San Diego, and completed 2 postdoc fellowships from Columbia and Yale Universities and Princeton University in the US. Professor Lee has published over 60 scientific publications with numerous appearing in high-impact journals. And beginning 2018, his research team has been taking interdisciplinary and novel approaches to address illegal wildlife trade and sustainable consumption issues in China. Professor Lee will now present insights from his research on how behavior science can be used to design campaigns to reduce illegal wildlife demand in China. Professor Lee, the floor is yours.
Thank you. So thank you for inviting me to the panel. My name is Thierry Lee. I'm currently in China, Sun Yat-sen University, doing research on illegal wildlife trade. So the wildlife trade issue, IWT issue, is actually rampant, not just in Bolivia, but everywhere else in the world. And what it does is that it actually jeopardizes our efforts to actually protect the biodiversity. It is what we call a complex issue because it requires the entire society to change their behavior to curb their demand for illegal wildlife. And it's very complex because there's so many drivers and so many motivations for consuming wildlife. Common IWT efforts actually regularly targets the suppliers, but the demand, the market, is actually a very, very big part of the problem. Issue now is that there isn't too many scientific studies out there. So we really need a new behavioral science approach to reduce the demand for illegal wildlife. Next, please. Next slide, please. So we're very fortunate to get funding from the EU to work on this project. One of the first things that we did together with Wildlife Conservation Society, my university, as well as Behavior Insights team, our research collaboration, is really to sort of create what we call a BI unit, or Behavior Insights unit. And this unit actually helps us to understand ways to actually help to reduce demand for illegal wildlife, particularly in a market like China, which is quite big. And because it's such a complex issue, we have members that come from different disciplines, such as economics, psychology, law, as well as ecology. And we strongly believe that behavioral science approach is key to resolving the issues that we have in terms of demand reduction for illegal wildlife. Next slide, please. Next slide. Thank you. So this project that's funded by the EU allow us to actually look at the entire supply chain from the source to the market for a few keystone species, important species, including the tiger, the elephant, as well as turtles in the greater Mekong region, as well as Malaysia and China. Our team partners against wildlife crime, especially in the China section, WCS China, State University, as well as BIT, focus on demand reduction at the demand end. Next slide, please. So what is very interesting about our collaboration is that we have recruited Behavior Insights team, one of the top unit or nudge unit in the world, who is renowned in some of the efforts that they do to change behavior in public health and other services. We actually work with them and the first of its kind collaboration to help to reduce the demand for wildlife, illegal wildlife. And we take a very different approach, which is the test approach with the target, explore, solution, trial, and scale approach, which I will elaborate next. Next slide, please. What is really important is that we want evidence-based interventions, not just any intervention. And we want to measure and track self-reported consumption patterns, as well as to understand their complex drivers, and really to design and evaluate trial interventions, such as marketing campaign. And last but not least, we want to be able to scale up these interventions so we can target certain sections of the populations or target audience. And we want to be able to evaluate and monitor the impact of our interventions. Next slide, please. So overall, we want to present an innovative solution, one that looks at BI or behavior insights, and one that takes an interdisciplinary approach, ones that allow NGO government institutions to participate in the process, and ones that really looked at leveraging civil society to make the change happen, ones that actually use the evidence-based trial interventions, as well as scaling it up and testing its effectiveness. Last but not least, we hope to develop a guide for future behavior interventions with regard to reducing demand for illegal wildlife. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Professor Lee, for this comprehensive and interesting presentation on behavior changes. I would like now to give the floor to our third speaker, Mrs. Tran Lee. Forgive me if I pronounce your name badly. So, Tu is currently director of the Center for Media and Development Initiatives, a leading NGO in media in Vietnam. She has worked for and published in Vietnam's biggest newspapers and international media. She was the co-founder and the first chief editor of VN Express International, the most read English newspaper in Vietnam. And she was also awarded various journalist prizes. She holds a master's in philosophy in development studies at the University of Oxford and was a journalist fellow at Reuters and Institute of Journalism, University of Oxford. Tui, the floor is yours, please.
Yeah, thank you very much. Then I share my okay.
Yes, I can't hear. She disappeared. Yeah, I think she's experiencing some technical issues. So can we now move on the short video, the TikTok video? Oh, she's back? Okay. Yeah, thank you, thanks for coming back. So now, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's my pleasure to be here and to present probably as a journalist and also as a part of the media who work on fighting against wildlife trafficking. I want to make some quite short point about how the media can assist combating wildlife trafficking effect. So first, I would like to present through the role of the media from developing countries in combating wildlife trafficking. As you see that the media have a quite important role in raising public awareness. It also help to detect small trader in detecting methods of how wildlife crime rings operate. It can also identify person involved in the threats and make investigative story into enforcement actions. It raises awareness and change wildlife consumer behavior and push for enforcement. And that's what actually I observed that effect in all of my career as a journalist. And it's happening in, even in Vietnam where the media environment might be more difficult, it still have the kind of effects. So the common journalism skills that used for wildlife trafficking coverage, actually it used a lot of investigative journalism. For example, journalists in Vietnam go undercover a lot, and I can see that a lot of coverage from the media internationally, they still have to use the technique at going undercover. One of the most probably dangerous journalism skill. Obviously, we have news and we have policy and law debate. So what are the challenges that the media in developing countries face in combating wildlife trafficking? I can list some challenges here. Obviously, it's a risk, the danger that involving investigative journalism. Going undercover is never, safe, and it can physically threat to the journalists. But also, it's the mainstream media is having kind of difficult time at the moment. It has failing business model, compared to in competition to social media. A lot of the media, mainstream media now, they have to have clickbait or page view business model, and it's no longer very sustainable, and it's also mean the reduce resources for investigative journalism, also reduce coverage for public interest and development issue, and also like another challenge is I can see that Vietnamese media, but I see also in developing country, most of the media they cover only individual addresses, and they also face lack of financial support for lengthy and in-depth investigation. And investigative stories are mostly description of events and of cases, and very few look at systemic issues like law or policy or any bottleneck for the enforcement. Another challenge is the journalists, the local journalists. They, because of their foreign language proficiency, it's difficult for them to access cross-border or systemic material. It's very hard for Vietnamese journalists, for example, to coordinate with African journalists, to chase the rhino horns, trafficking, or the ivory. It's just because they cannot communicate due to language problems. Also, the crime syndicate ghosting tactics. So I used to try to find the address of the shipment, huge shipment, like tons of ivory and tons of pangolin scale from Africa to Vietnam, and they have very clear address in Hanoi, very is the capital. So I tried to go there and I couldn't find the address. So it's a ghosting address. It lack of data journalism skill. It also problems. Lack of journalism professional skill. Lack of public data. You know, in Vietnam we cannot access the court cases, the address. All are not available publicly. So the way we do is that like we have to count the case on the media by hand. You know, it's take a lot of time. So my recommendations are like you know, at international level, there should be more cross-border collaborations between you know journalists in different countries. There would be more journalism trainings and coaching for journalists. More collaborate with data-driven journalism to counter wildlife trafficking. There's a social media campaign. More advocacy for public data access. Probably like small grants. It already done, but I think this could be much better. There would be more small grant for journalists and also like policy debate. Yeah, that's what my recommendation. Yeah. Thank you very much for the attention.
Thank you, Tui, for sharing your experience as a journalist and highlighting the critical role of investigations in exposing wildlife trafficking. So before going to the Q&A session, we'll now run a short video highlighting how social media platforms combat online wildlife crime and trade. The video features Mr. Liu Huan, Director of Community Safety and Risk Management Department at the Douyin in China, globally known as TikTok.
Hello everyone, my name is Liu Huan. I'm from Community Safety and Risk Management Department of Douyin. As one of the most popular short video social media platforms in China, Douyin has over 600 million daily active users. Douyin is committed to strengthen platform regulations to crack down and prevent illegal wildlife trade and safeguard biodiversity. In order to empower Douyin staff to adopt zero-tolerance policy against illegal wildlife trade on Douyin, with support from NGO partners and projects like Partners Against Wildlife Crime, Douyin has optimized the reporting mechanism related to wildlife and set up a special working group for wild animals and plants protection. Over the past year, Douyin deleted over 1 million postings containing illegal wildlife trade information. To improve efficiency in monitoring, Douyin is also cooperating with International Fund for Animal Welfare in developing a tool which uses machine learning and big data technology in identification of wildlife products and live animals in short videos. The tool will be able to identify 100 live animals commonly traded as pets and 16 kinds of products of endangered species, such as ivory, rhino horn, tiger products, and pangolin scales. Short videos and live broadcasts are becoming powerful tools for protecting environment and wildlife. In September 2020, Douyin and the National Forestry and Grassland Administration jointly launched the Treasure of Life campaign. They invited several partners, including Chinese Academy of Science, to jointly launch 4 live broadcast campaigns on animal protection. The campaign attracted more than 130 million views. There are now many users on Douyin who create large amounts of high-quality contents to promote wildlife and environment protection. Douyin strongly supports the creation and the promotion of these videos and calls on our users to support and participate in biodiversity conservation. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing your video. And now we are moving to the session of Q&A. And I'd like to open the floor to all the participants. Now, the first question that comes out from the audience is, what could be the role of media in pressuring policymakers, in this case of illegal arms trade and trafficking? And the question is for Mrs. Tew.
Yeah, can you repeat the question, please?
So the question is, what's the role of media in pressuring policymakers to act against illegal arms trade and trafficking?
I think from Vietnamese perspective, I think the media have quite a big role in pressuring the policymaker. In Vietnam, for example, the government have a policy that any government agency have to answer in 15 days if there any issue raised by the media. So if there is an investigations on on any problem, social problem, but for example on wildlife trafficking that raise the concerns, then the government, the policymaker, they have to respond for that to that. So I think it's quite if there is very professional, well-based investigation, it can have quite a pressure on the policymaker. But obviously, there are cases that that the policymaker is not responsive to the media. But in general, I think the media have a quite a role.
Thank you. So, and question for you, Giovanna. I know you spend much of your time in the field trying to address this crisis of illegal arms trade and trafficking. And from your presentation, I had many challenges. Could you share with us some of your success story so that people in the audience leave with some positive news about what's going on the ground?
Well, I think that we have many successful stories regarding the collaboration between the authorities and civil society. I think that in our countries in the Andes Amazon region, we set different or we develop different training, but not only like workshops or training sessions. We are working in close coordination with authorities to try to include as part of their curriculums, because we know that under different political situation here in our countries, it's very high the turnover of the authorities. For that reason, we try to improve these challenges about the high turnover of the authorities in charge of combating wildlife trafficking. And now we are working together with them to try to include different topics regarding from the law enforcement to different new innovative strategies. For example, including different new concepts about One Health and another type of actions under their curricula. That is important because we try with these actions to try to make also sustainable of these actions under official curricula from the officers in charge of combat wildlife trafficking. I think that is one of the success stories that I can tell now to you.
Thank you, Giovanna. And I have a question to Professor Lee. Professor, according to your experience on behavior science in China and also your international experience, have you identified common behavior features that will be valid also in other geographies?
Thanks for the question. I think this is a very interesting and very important question, And this is precisely why we actually need to do research like ours. I think the point is that rarely would you find common threats, common solutions, or common trends across different places. So we really need to sort of understand the drivers, the context behind the motivations for the hunting or the consumption. Otherwise, it's very hard to actually find an effective solution to reduce the issues that we have, the demand that we actually have, demand for illegal wildlife that we have, not just where I work in China, but also in Amazon and also in Vietnam. So what we are trying to do with our project is really to use China as a test case, to develop a set of tools that we could actually use. And we want to be able to share this experience and hopefully a success story with many of our partners who are interested in reducing demand for illegal wildlife. So to answer your question, I think it's just very hard to actually find a common solution, a common driver, so to speak. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you all. Thanks for your good responses. And we need now to move on to the closing of this debate. I would like now to invite our speakers to provide us with their final message. And I'll ask everyone to give us the closing remark. For each of you has 1 minute. So I'll start with Giovanna, if you don't mind. You have 1 minute to close our debate, to give your final message and final thought.
Okay. Well, as a final conclusion, I would like to say that in Latin America, we are working together with authorities, with civil society. We are working with different activities from the field and also trying to include different actions at high level decision makers. And it's really, it's not easy because, as I mentioned, that wildlife trafficking is not considered as an important serious crime, but we are working on. We have different alliances in all of on different countries, and I think that it's important to work together and to improve different collaboration between all, because we understand that we have a problem, but we are working to combat this, making this type of alliance and collaboration. And thank you because we have this opportunity to develop different actions under EU support, and we are very grateful for all to develop this with this support.
Thank you. And now, Mr. Ali, Professor Ali, any final thought?
So I would like to take this opportunity to thank the EU for funding this one-of-a-kind research that really allows us to use state-of-the-art research approaches, partnering with one of the best there is out there unit in nudging and changing behavior. And together we hope to develop useful, innovative, effective solutions to reduce demand for illegal wildlife, not just in China, but also throughout the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Lee. Now, Mrs. Tu, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I would like to say that over the time, I can see that the effort from organizations like the WCS or from the EU to fight against wildlife trafficking has been have been seen, and it's obviously there is a result, and I can see the huge difference in Vietnamese awareness about wildlife trafficking and wildlife consumption. But obviously, there's still some loopholes over there at policy level, at the enforcement level. So I hope that in the future, the media can do a much deeper, investigation into system mix issue. It also obviously there is a lot of effort from journalists in different developing countries, but there are not enough collaborations together, for more cross-border story in order to provide a bigger picture. So I hope in the future there will be more cross-border collaborations, and it's going to be a lot more effective. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you all for your inspiring words. It indeed takes a network to defeat a network of criminals. From work in the field, like what Giovanna has been doing, from behavior science to understand consumer behaviors and what the factors leading to what they are doing, and to media in helping in detecting small traders and trying to understand the trade networks. So this has been inspiring, and really thank you for having shared your experiences in this session. I wish you all success in your future endeavors on countering illegal Arab trade and trafficking. Thanks a lot to our audience and for your active participation. And feel free to reach out to me or my colleague in WCS should you want to discuss further on these issues or if you need more information. A big thank you also to the EDD organizers that despite the difficult situation due to COVID, have made these debates possible. I now hand over back to the thematic moderator, Annelies Beck, for the following events on this channel. Thank you all. Thank you very much.
And thank you too, Michel, for an excellent session there. Very interesting indeed. And your catchphrase, "It takes a network to combat a network of criminals," will stay with me for sure. But also what Giovanna was sharing with us, her experiences in the field, stressing the fact that law enforcement, but also cooperation and the engagement of civil society is of the essence to really curb wildlife trafficking and timber cutting as well in biodiverse regions that need to be protected. She mentioned wildlife trafficking is not yet seen as a transnational crime. It needs more attention in that respect, and we need a behavioral change. And that is interesting, that mention of behavioral change, because it was like a red thread throughout your session, Michel, and we will pick up on that in the next interview as well in a couple of minutes. There was Professor Tin-Min Lee, of course, who is focused on the question how to reduce the demand for illegal wildlife consumption. Is it a matter of habits, of taste, of status? I mean, he's researching for this wicked issue, as he called it, this complicated issue, the drivers, the main drivers. And I take away as well that these drivers may differ from region to region, from continent to continent, and it needs an expansive research tool to be able to really detect that. And behavioral insight, again that word, behavioral insight science might help get us that insight in the entire supply chain and nudge people in the right direction. And then, of course, there was the story of Tran Le Thieu, a colleague, a journalist as well, working in entirely different circumstances, of course, highlighting the important role of media in combating wildlife trade, laying bare the wildlife trade's modus operandi is very important. Investigative journalism is of the essence. Tricky trade, often very dangerous. A lack of finance and financial resources can hamper the research. There's also sometimes a practical problem in terms of language skills and international contacts. But when it's done right, it can actually impact policymakers. And I will take away that TikTok took the time to illustrate its commitment to curbing wildlife trafficking as well. This fight is not only fought in the field, underground, and at high-level panel level, so to speak, but also in that realm, that virtual realm of social media. Thank you again, all of you participants and Michel. We'll be back in a couple of minutes with our next conversation, actually delving into that aspect of behavioral change a little bit more. See you in a couple of minutes.